Muhammad's marriage to Khadija brought him personal happiness, but it did not mean that he was content with his life or the ways of the world in which he lived.
He, from age 25 to 40, should have been the prime of his life. Got Khadija, wealthy, beautiful Arab woman who trusted him. He'd got 4 beautiful daughters. He had 2 sons born of him which didn't survive. He'd become a man of respect. He was from a respectful clan anyway, but now he had the family to back him. And in a funny way, he'd risen to the top of his society and had become sort of sickened at what that meant with the sort of violence of clan society and the way that wealth could buy you anything.
The fact was that Muhammad was not happy. He himself had experienced the extremes of Arab tribal society, and the iniquities of tribal life disturbed him and made him uneasy. By all accounts, he'd reached a moment of personal crisis.
He was really upset by the bad treatment of the poor and the weak and the downtrodden people in society. There's definitely this great ontological anxiety he had about, the big questions. Why are we here? What's the purpose of life? How do we make sense of the world around us?
I believe he was looking for a connection, just like Abraham was looking when he was young, just like Moses was looking when he was wandering the valleys, just like all the other prophets of the Old and the New Testament were looking.
Probably at the heart of it also is the most rooted issue for many who begin to question their society and even question, if you will, the morality of the society and the religious values they were raised with, which get down to the nature of God.
According to Muslim tradition, at this time Muhammad had begun to make regular spiritual retreats. Throughout the year he would take Khadija and his family up into the mountains above Mecca to seek peace and quiet and pray. What was Muhammad after? What was he seeking and what was he doing? He was certainly troubled, and he was seeking some kind of spiritual truth. Muhammad's spiritual retreats were becoming more intense and ever more frequent, and they were devoted to really intense personal reflection and meditation. And he chose this spot, Jabal Nur, which is a hill far up and a really challenging climb up from the city down below. And he would climb all the way to the very top, to a cave known as Ghahira. And it was there that he would spend hours, in fact, whole days and nights, in ever more intense and fervent meditation. Until one day, in the year 610, something happened that would transform not just his life, but the entire history of the world. According to Muslim tradition, Muhammad was meditating as usual, and he fell asleep. But then suddenly, he awoke in abject terror. His body was shaking uncontrollably. He later described the experience as if an angel had him in such a tight, suffocating embrace that he felt that his life was being squeezed out of him. As he lay there, completely shattered, Muhammad heard one voice, and it commanded him with one word: Iqra, read. But Muhammad replied, I can't. I'm not one of those who read. The voice returned for a second time. Read. Muhammad replied, I'm not one of those who read. Then the voice returned for a third time. Read. And on this third command, Muhammad replied, what shall I read?
اقرأ باسم ربك الذي خلق خلق الإنسان من علق اقرأ وربك الأكرم الذي علم بالقلم علم الإنسان ما لم يعلم.
He was able to hear the divine message. And it's quite clear that revelation, some of the prophets of Israel had this experience too, is devastating. Not a nice, peaceful experience, but something that racks them in every limb. Prophet Jeremiah cried aloud, "Ah, God, God, I can't speak, I'm a child. Your revelation hurts me in every limb." Isaiah, when he saw his vision of God in the temple, said, "I'm dead. I've looked on the Lord of hosts." This is a lethal power, because the impact of what's coming through is shattering. Your world goes. The world as it was before goes.
You have an essence of the divine power, which you have to articulate. That's the role of prophets, into the language of your time, into the metaphors of your time, so that people around you can understand this completely unworldly experience you have. And for me, the prophet has got that sort of terrifying, brief access to divine power. And he's using that consciousness that sort of flooded into his body and creating the words.
This is the defining moment in Muhammad's life. And today, for the 1.5 billion people all around the world who follow him, completely accepting his revelation defines what it means to be a Muslim. And yet, at the time of the first revelation at the cave of Hira, Muhammad's reaction was very different. Muhammad ran to his beloved wife. "Khadija, oh Khadija," he said, "cover me, cover me. What has happened to me? I fear for myself." Khadija took her cloak and covered his exhausted body. And then, with all of his doubts, she was the one who reassured him about his experience. Khadija's words not only calmed Muhammad, but they also helped him reconcile himself with what had happened. The seeker had finally found what he was looking for.